The Adventures of Pancho and Pedro. Friendship. In a very small town on the coast of California, there were only 8 houses, each with a vegetable garden. There were also some chickens, horses, pigs, cows, and dogs. Of all the people in this town, there was one 8-year-old boy named Pedro who lived all alone with his mother and father.
Hi, I'm Pedro.
At harvest time, Pedro helped the market ladies by carting boxes of fresh vegetables to the stalls on the highway. But Pedro was very lonely because every day when he came home from school, his parents were at work. His house was empty and there was nobody to talk to. So, every night before he went to sleep, he said to himself,
I wish I had a special friend.
One day, Pedro was walking along the paths that circled the small group of houses where he heard a strange voice coming from one of the trees. He stopped in his tracks, looked up, and his eyes spotted a bright green and red bird looking down on him. He stared for a moment and then called out,
Hola, parejito. Hello, little bird.
The parrot then jumped to the ground. Pedro carefully folded his feet under him and sat next to the bird.
Hi, I'm Pedro.
The beautiful parrot carefully stepped forward and jumped on Pedro's hand. Pedro said,
I'll bet you're hungry or maybe thirsty. Why don't you come home with me and we can find the person who owns you?
Pedro couldn't believe this was real. His heart was beating with excitement inside his chest. He stood up with the bird clutching onto his finger. Then he stepped very carefully over the pebbles in the road, trying not to stumble. He was thinking to himself,
Oh, I wonder if he has a name. If he were mine, I'd call him Pancho.
Pedro opened the door and saw his mother cutting green peppers. She looked up, saw the parrot on Pedro's finger, and greeted him.
¿Qué tal, mijo? What do you have there, my son?
Pedro whispered,
Mommy, please don't scare the pajarito. He came down from the trees, jumped on my finger, spoke to me, and I've named him Pancho.
Mommy smiled.
Well, why don't we give him something to drink?
She took a saucer from the shelf and filled it with clear water from the faucet and set the dish on the table. Pancho jumped off Pedro's finger and hopped over to it.
Oh, he's drinking it, Mommy. May I keep him?
Well, I'm not sure.
Mommy answered.
Perhaps the pajarito belongs to someone. Why don't we wait for Papi to come home? And while we're waiting, why don't we print some signs to put up in the neighborhood?
Pedro didn't want to give up his bird, but he knew his mother was right, so he said,
Well, I guess it's a good idea.
Found green and red parrot. If you know who owns him, contact Pedro Garcia, 201 Rose Avenue. And then Pedro, with Pancho on his shoulder, posted a sign on every other tree along the main street of the town. The signs were there for many weeks, but not one person came to claim the parrot. When the rains came, the green and red letters all ran together. In the meantime, Pedro's father had built a big cage so when the parrot was tired, he could climb onto a wooden perch, put his head under his wing, and go to sleep. Pedro talked to Pancho all the time and told him his secrets. Pancho, too, talked more and more and more. Pedro went to the library and found books about parrots. Then, for sharing time in school, he took Pancho and introduced him to all the children in his class.
This is my parrot friend Pancho. He's a cherry-headed conure who comes from South America.
His teacher was very pleased.
What you shared with us was excellent, and we all learned something new and very interesting today.
Everybody in the small town now knew who Pancho was. Every day after school, and even on weekends, Pedro and his parrot could be seen walking down the paths together. Pedro's smile had never been so big. The two of them were never apart, except when Pedro was in school. It was always Pedro and Pancho, Pancho and Pedro. Pedro wasn't alone anymore. He had found a good friend, un buen amigo.